Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the Masculinity podcast. My name is Pablo Woolls-Blanco. I'm joined again by Zac Fine. This, as I say, is the 5th episode of these almost mini podcasts we're doing, discussing topics surrounding a man and helping you with guides into how to become the best man you can be, regardless of age, really. But we've got a nice dynamic here where I'm a young man. Zac Fine has lived a little longer than me, and I'm able to ask him questions about what it means to grow up as a man and everything that goes with it. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing something we've titled A Man's Code. And I quite like the idea of it because I know for me as a young man, having a structure, having something to follow is massively helpful. And I think that helps me almost become the best version of myself when I've got that. So, Zac, if you want to introduce yourself, of course, to everyone, and then sort of touch on what a man's code is and what we're talking about here.
Okay, thank you, Pablo. I'm a counsellor and specialising in men's issues and issues around masculinity. And most of my clients are men. And what brought this theme up for me was talking about the importance of a man developing his own code to live by, and that code is developed from within, and it's not for anyone else. It's self-issuing, and it comes about through a process of it's quite a mysterious process. But the question is, do we spend most of our time consuming other people's thoughts and ideas, or do we generate our own thoughts and ideas and our own structures to live by? So that's the sort of teeing up today's conversation, because just a minute ago, when we were talking before we were recording, we were saying that maybe there's a masculine impulse to, a bit like the alpha male in a pack of dingoes or kangaroos or lions. There's a will to an instinct to create our own realm, create our own territory and our own systems. And maybe the feminine instinct is more to compliance and to find a structure to go into. And maybe what we're seeing as part of the anthropologically really fascinating times that we're in terms of men and boys, huge transitions. Men and boys have been socialized for the past couple of decades to fit into the feminine worldview of the nanny state. I'm a victim. I need benefits. I need tax breaks. I need handouts. I know this is all going to sound pretty harsh, but I'm exaggerating and maybe oversimplifying, but you can think of it in terms of left, right. Politically, left maybe could be viewed as more feminine. Right could be viewed as more sort of red in tooth and claw, the alpha male going out hunting, creating his own business, taking on the responsibility of people he employs and he or she employs. This doesn't have to be man or woman. Masculine energy is masculine energy. Just earlier today, I was talking to a woman who plays rugby at a really high level, and she's got masculine qualities. I almost just lost my train of thought then. I was just thinking of a guy called Thomas Sowell. I don't want to go off into the weeds here, but he talks about, he's a brilliant Black American economist. Have you heard of him?
No.
Check him out, Thomas Sowell.
Okay.
Sowell. But he's been pumping out amazing material since the 70s. And one of his really good arguments that I like is against minimum wage, because he says minimum wage, this feeds into the idea I'm talking about feminized value systems that they've become so naturalized we don't even see them. But people think there's a moral argument, there's sort of a self-evident moral argument for minimum wage, and you must be some kind of, sociopath if you don't agree with that. But Thomas Sowell says, well, if there had been minimum wage when he was a kid in the 60s, he wouldn't have been able to get his first job and get all this experience. The people it hurts are the people who need their first jobs, because employers don't want to take people on with no skills, who are really hard to get rid of if they have to pay them. I don't know what the minimum wage is now, 10 quid, 11 quid. Anyway, so that's a bit of a rabbit hole, but just to pull it back, the proposition here that made the conversation is, are we men who are creating our own codes, and it doesn't have to be fixed, it can be fluid and flexible, and we're evolving. But the deeper question, the principle here is, have we got the balls to claim our own? We're born free, we don't owe anyone anything. We're sort of slightly tricked into thinking that we're permitted to do all these things, but the government is just the government. We've got our ancestors walked the land tens of thousands of years ago, and so did our non-human ancestors. So there's a very powerful freedom that we can reclaim. We can reclaim our sovereignty, and it's connected to that. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's something like that.
Mm-hmm. I guess before we go on later to how each of the viewers can discover their own code, and I'm quite intrigued about that, because I think it is different for everyone. I mean, even off air, I mentioned to you something about, maybe a man should always be fit and strong, and then you suggested, well, it can be different for everyone, for how their code works, what really gets them going. But would you say there are some fundamentals that you would put in that should be in a man's code about how they should live day to day? Because I quite like the idea of having a few fundamentals that if I'm hitting every day, is that going to at least put me in at least a base level. Then from there I can go up and do all the other things I want to do. But would you suggest any fundamentals, I suppose, for guys on a daily?
Yeah, I can think of. I'm smiling because I'm just thinking of Stephen Jenkinson. I was going to go and get 2 books to look at, but I ended up getting loads. But this book by Stephen Jenkinson, I talked to him on one of my videos. Check it out on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
He's as he's got older, he's worked with over 1,000 dying people as a counselor, and he's a world expert on grief. And eldership, and his proposition, his code is really understanding limitation, failure, death, and it's almost the opposite of what you're asking, and I see that as the ultimate end game. So for me, from where I am at in life, I'm about halfway through my life. I spent the last 20 years trying to sort my shit out in different ways, and encountered some real catastrophes. No one's died, but I thought I knew what I was doing, and I thought I was getting ahead, and then it disintegrated. And that's what Stephen Jenkinson talks about is this, we sort of need to fail in order to become wise, and we need to become wise in order to become elders, and we need to become elders because the world's going to shit. But we can't get but you're in a different life phase. So so for your question, I think it's a really good, I think you're right. I think there's different elements to, if we think about the life cycle of a boy and a man, it's, in the old world, it would be page, it'd be infant, then from 7 to 14, page, then from 14 to 21. I've forgotten what that word is. Maybe it's early night, and then it's night, prince, middle prince, late prince, and king. I think I've messed that up, but you get the point. It's there's these life cycles where you're in the phase of night, so your job is to go out and establish your competence and test yourself, find your own limits, and within that, very natural, those natural instincts to self-discovery, to see what you're capable of, and to get to realize what you're not capable of as well, to begin to that process. Within that, there's definitely a physical piece. There's so there'll be looking after yourself. Thinking about where my head was at when I was your age, I was more interested in testing the limits of what was possible in probably quite unhealthy, some unhealthy, some healthy. So into surfing and snowboarding, but also into massive benders and having loads of fun at festivals and all the rest of it, and also just massive road trips, seeing how much I could drive and fit things into free time and stuff. It's all really good fun. But so I guess and this is an individual thing, so it could be all skewed towards well-being and self-care, or it could be a bit more like hedonistic or adrenaline. It could be like what can I, talking to a guy the other day, and he said he got in his mid-20s, he got to the point where he realized he wasn't happy in his job, and he just wanted adrenaline, and he went and spent a few months just doing loads of things that really scared him. And when he got back, he was actually different, and then he was able to make big life decisions based off that. So in a way, he was discovering his own code through behaving it, like acting out the instincts. So I would say, listen, try and hear your instincts, and you're getting messages from within that may not make sense to your friends or your culture or your employer or your teachers. That's okay. Just explore if there's anything you can do to give them space. But I guess on a more granular level, like you're asking, the obvious things that occur to me are your circadian rhythm, your sleep pattern. If you can go to bed and get up at roughly the same time every day and have enough 7 cycles of REM, and movement's really good early in the morning. You also need to give yourself space to buffer and process and metabolize all the stuff that's going on. So it's really easy today not to get enough time off screen. And it's really easy to be full. I'm feeling very full at the moment, and I can actually it's a physical sensation. I don't have internal space, and if I don't do something about that, there's a consequence to my decision making and how well I can perform at everything. So there's physical stuff. There's Yeah, I'm a bit reticent to go to sort of list what, I don't think I should
Yeah.
list what people should do, but I suppose it's more of a what it could be. It could be stuff around money. It could be
Yeah.
stuff around what's my code in terms of building my financial independence. Do I have some sort of idea over
Yeah.
a plan, a direction of travel? Am I saving or am I investing, or what's going on?
Yeah.
People are we're not really educated very well on that. Um, and then what else? What else could come under the code? Um,
I
what
think
are
you
my
touched on
values?
a lot
Oh,
of it.
sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, I think you touched on a lot of it. I was going to say stuff. Yeah, values is a good one. I try and remind myself of. Yeah, how do I want to be perceived as a person? How do I almost want my legacy to be as a way I like thinking about it?
Yeah.
Positive self-talk.
Yes. Yeah. Really good one. So, how do I talk to myself? How do when I make a mistake?
Mm.
Oh, this is a great book for that. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. The Four Agreements
Mm.
by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's really short, easy to read,
Mm.
quick, and it's a really nice. The Four Agreements. I'll just read them out, and if you're not
Yeah.
sure where to start, actually, I think this is a really good idea. This book. Um, the Four Agreements he suggests to live by are: be impeccable with your word, speak with integrity, say only what you mean, avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. That's be impeccable with your word. Second one is don't take anything personally.
Mm.
Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. So that's don't take anything personally. I wish someone had told me this stuff when I was 15. Don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. Yeah, I love that. Don't make
Mm.
assumptions. And number four is the reason this just popped into my head, because this is to do with self-talk. When something goes wrong, when I've fucked something up or not done what I intended to do, my inner critic can have a go at me. He used to brutalize me, and
Yeah.
I didn't realize the extent to which it was affecting me and other people, because it was it wasn't it was a toxic energy that I would then project onto other people, because I thought, well, if I'm getting this, then it's only fair that other people get it as well. That's literally what I used to tell
Yeah.
myself. So I'd be really awful to my girlfriend, and I'd be like, but I'm under the same conditions, so it's equal. Just not
Yeah.
getting the fact that it's completely it's just horrible and unnecessary. Like it was like an internal sort of Nazi camp guard
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like level of just grimness. So always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstances, simply do your best and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. So that
Yeah.
is a banger, a total banger. If you don't know where to start with this stuff, I'd really highly recommend that book.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's what I wanted to get at with that question in terms of how can people start off. I think that's what I found good is because obviously you can strive to be at really top levels with everything going on, and that's great. And I think everyone can get there, but just as a base, I think fundamental to say, right, if I do these things every day, then I'm pretty confident that if I do that within a few weeks at least, or at most, sorry, I'm going to start being in a good place to start pushing onto things I want. Can we touch on then how a man can discover his own code? Because we've said about the fact that not everything applies for everyone. You know, things for it, some people might be, like you say, obsessed with finance. I know some people who are, and that drives the one. It makes them really happy. I know other people who it's the same with fitness, and I know other people who are very, very happy and couldn't care less about fitness or gym or any of that.
Totally. Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
yeah, what would you say about that?
So my personal experience has been notice how I feel. Really, that's it. Notice how I feel when I'm listening to someone or reading someone I admire. What is it? What is that telling me? So this guy, Stephen Jenkinson, when I read this book and I started looking at his videos, I was just like, whoa, holy shit. He's saying things that just are totally profound to me. They're really kind of nailing me over and over again. So I took that as a sign that there's something here that is to do with why I'm here. I don't know what it is. It's a mysterious thing, but I'm gonna turn towards it. And I ended up talking to him. I interviewed him, and he's actually in Cornwall in August. I'll put the event link under the video. And I still don't know what. I don't know. It's a mystery, but it's like finding your true north. So some things will resonate with you. I don't know what it is about his work that I'm going to pick up and maybe work with, or maybe I'm already starting to integrate some of his values, and maybe at some point I'll disagree with his values and create a different track, in my own head to what I think is right. Doesn't really matter. But the point is, you'll know when something resonates with you. It's like when I started surfing when I was 10. My mum's boyfriend taught me. He was a pro surfer, and I was just totally shitting myself, and then very quickly realized, oh, actually, I just want to do this. And there's no more thought than that. It's just a sort of like a magnetism. You're being pulled towards something, and in the same way, you'll be repelled from other things. So I also tried to sort of pretend to myself that I could be really successful working in PR, and I wasn't. It took me a while to just be honest and say to myself, I don't like doing this. And the problem was, I made life a misery to the people I was working with. My business partner, I feel really, I just made her life really difficult for a while, and another person that was working with us, because I was really unhappy, but I didn't have the clarity at that point. I didn't have the integrity or the code or an understanding of my own values, just to own it and to say, I'm really sorry, I can't do this, because if I keep forcing myself, I become so miserable that A, I'm not very good at the job, and B, I'm making your lives miserable. So what's the point? But for me at that point, it was more to do with, I felt like I should be able to do it. And there was an expectation I felt from my father, who, although he wasn't directly involved in the business, I felt as though he was witnessing what was going on, and he had some input into the business sort of at a different level. Like he was almost like a mentor kind of thing. And so for me at that point, what was the most important was like not letting him down in my own head. So at that point, my code was a bit skewed. I had a code that was really just putting my father on a pedestal, and he's a businessman, a successful commercial, in the commercial world. And my code really wasn't very developed at that point. It was more just like, I need to be like my dad, and I need to prove that I can hack all these difficulties. Whereas my code evolved since then, and now my code would be, I need to take responsibility for how my behavior impacts other people. And if I can't, if I'm not accountable to that, then there's no point in doing anything.
So in terms of what other people can do, if you're coming to me, Zac, and I come to you as a client, as a young man, I say, I want to discover my own code. Would you tell me perhaps to look at what makes me happiest, what my passions are,
Definitely,
and go from there? Or would it
yeah.
be, focus on those fundamentals and make a code off of them as well, implement them into my life?
I would, broadly speaking, I would offer that idea of what lights you up, what fills you up, okay. And then what values come out of that. So, for example, if you really enjoy, if you notice that you're happiest when you're with people, or you're on an adventure, you're on a road trip, or you're on a surf trip, or well, there's certain qualities and values associated that you can crystallize down, and then you can just get a feel for the things that you need in your life to be well. And on the other hand, when do you feel really miserable? And is it when you're around certain types of people? And maybe there's clues there as to, well, what are your values within that? So some people, it's not immediately obvious. So you can, I think I mentioned on a previous podcast that when I was younger, I used to spend a lot of time hanging out, smoking weed.
Yeah.
Just around some people that I really enjoyed being around, but other people, there wasn't really much, like, it was just kind of like going through the motions.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get to, is it's easy to spend our lives like that, just being kind of polite and saying and thinking, I'm actually a bit bored, but no one else seems to be that bored. So just me. But if you notice you're bored a lot of the time, then that's a clue to what your values and what your code could then be. Do you like being around people who are real, or do you like being around people who have physical courage, or who are resilient, physically resilient or mentally resilient? Like, so some people I've witnessed working as therapists, if I saw them on the street, a woman in her 60s, I wouldn't have a clue that she's actually just this extraordinary powerhouse, like fucking hardcore warrior of a person who has so much resilience and can offer people so much support.
Yeah.
And when I started seeing that, a couple of people, when I was on my placement in 2017, and I saw it before that when I was working at the Samaritans, I just started to look at the world differently. There were these people that you wouldn't think, there's no way you would realize, but they're working through the night, supporting people who are helping people out of real darkness, and suicidal people.
Yeah.
And so I think, it's easier for me to talk about my experience around this and sort of try and pull strands out. But for me, that was a sort of breadcrumb trail, like a thread that I was following since I had a real kind of a bit of a breakdown when I was about 30. And then I started getting therapy, and then I started volunteering at the Samaritans, and I was realizing that I needed to do stuff that meant something. I needed to do something with meaning and purpose. And for me, that happened to be volunteering at the Samaritans at the time. But through that, I developed more of a code around, oh, for me to be all right and to be of any use to anyone, I need to be doing work that I feel aligned with.
Yeah.
And like you say, that for someone else, that could just be could be trading,
Yeah.
making money. Fine.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah. But do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So take action, join something. I think I like, I mean, I think we've spoken about it before, but I like the idea of volunteering or joining a group of that sort, because I just think it can give you so much in many different ways. Like us as humans, I mean, maybe we don't realize it, how much we like helping people as well. It makes us feel good, especially if we're not getting anything like back from it necessarily in terms of like material or money. But it just makes us feel part of something and gives you
Yes.
value as well. You're like, okay, I'm in this shit place, but look, I'm actually helping all these people.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Pablo, and it's reminding me of
Yeah.
it's reminding me of a book that I read around that time in my life. I think I was 29,
Yeah.
and it's called something like 40 Things to Do Instead of College, and it's the American word. It's university, but it's written by James Altucher, I think his name is. I can find it and put the link underneath this video, because in that he just, it's a really short book, and he says, you know, you're 18 or whatever. It's really easy to feel like you should do certain things.
Yeah.
And that this is the problem, isn't it? And we get this all our lives. It's, well, I think I should do this because my parents think I should, or my teachers think I should, or there's a message, there's a sort of cultural zeitgeist message that I probably should be this kind of man. But anyway, he was just saying that here's 40 things you can do. And if in the worst case scenario, you can still go to university afterwards. So like, just chill the fuck out and do something, do one of these. And I read it. I actually got it for my nephew, and I read it before I sent it to him. And in there was one of the 40 things was go to a Vipassana retreat, a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. So I just, once I read that, I had this funny feeling like I had with this, and I just thought, right, okay. So I just went on the website and booked it, and I had I'd only read this like paragraph about it.
Yeah.
And I booked it, and it was 6 months ahead. So I kind of forgot about it. And then it got to December, and I was like, oh yeah, I've got that thing. And I went and drove to near Hereford in Wales, and went into this 10-day silent retreat. And it was one of the best things I've ever done. And I ended up going on 2 more over the next few years. And it just, that's what I mean. It's a mystery, but these things come to us. I don't know how, but if we're awake, if we're just alert and ready to notice notice how we feel when we interact with something. And it is mysterious, because I didn't know what that was, but I had a feeling that something was meant to happen with it. So I just followed it, and that was it. I didn't research it beyond that. Maybe that's just me, but
no, I love the idea of a retreat. I don't know if I'm thinking about it in a very like series or film way, where it's like, you know, you leave your phone, you go into the mountains, and you're on these tents, and everyone's like at peace. But something along those lines. I've actually already researched a few, because I've got it on. I don't know, maybe a bucket list you'd call it. But I just think in the modern day, when we are so like stressed and on the screen all the time, and just worried, and just the way the world's going, I'm not very fond of it. I just think if you're able to go and do that sort of thing, then do it. Because I mean, I'm just intrigued to hear your experience, because you said it's one of the best things you've done, but it's always something that's appealed to me a lot in terms to disconnect and sort of like bring you back.
I would highly recommend it. You got nothing to lose. You know, if you don't like it, don't do it again. It's a beautiful organization that runs it. It's accessible. You know, it's for everyone of any means. So check it out. Dharma Deepa is the name of the Maybe I should put a link to that as well. I need
yeah,
to
that'd be great.
keep note of all the things I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think I've got a pen here. Do I? Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I should probably, like, we could talk about that a lot more on another podcast.
Yeah. Yep.
Something happened to me on that first one that's changed my life, and it created. Yeah, it put down some scaffolding or some foundations that served me. That was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose as a final question, I think to be nice to wrap up, I like the fact that you brought up the fact that you were in that dark place. 'Cause a lot of people can relate to that. I know I've been in bad places. I'm not sure to what extent, but it's so difficult to get out of it. And I know everyone listening or watching can relate to that, obviously, because it's all happened to everyone. But
yeah,
it ties into what we're talking about today in terms of the code. What do you do, and what did you do to try and dig yourself out of that place? So you've touched on a few things you did.
Yeah, so meditation was a big one.
Okay.
What else? Well, when I had my first child, I wasn't in a relationship with her mother, and she was born on my 25th birthday, and I think my values, my code up until that point was have fun, really, and get adrenaline kicks.
Yeah.
And then I had coming into fatherhood unexpectedly. I discovered the joy in service. You know, that this idea of I've got responsibility to my daughter. I need to show up. I need to provide, and I need to be consistent around those things. And that turned into doing a lot of traveling because her mum moved a long way away, and I, even though it was very grueling, and all I was doing for a long time really was just working and then traveling, but it was okay because my code said to me, this is the best thing that I can be doing at the moment.
Yeah.
That's evolved as I've got older to realize that, with hindsight, that led to my breakdown because I wasn't looking after myself.
Yeah.
So as I've got older, it's difficult to get the balance, but I've tried to get more of a balance between service and introspection and self-care. Your question was about how did I find my code, and there was something on the tip of my tongue. So it's been evolving, but it's been around resilience and it's so annoying. There was just something on the tip of my tongue that was.
You'd mentioned meditation before.
Yeah. So. Okay. So So I go from service, working, probably overworking, overstretching.
Yeah.
To meltdown, to learning meditation, to then, that's right, the discipline around self-care came in. Okay. And what sort of happened, and I think this probably happens with a lot of people naturally as we get older, is I just became more conscious of the consequences of drinking too much, or not sleeping well enough, or doing too much driving, or trying to work to fit loads of work in and loads of driving in. And so there was it was trial and error, really. It was trial and error. I've never been particularly good at planning, so I just sort of kept hitting brick walls and then going, okay, not that, what about this? And so I've got it. I think it becomes automatic, but until it does, it has to be a conscious process of going, oh, I need to actually decide to not drink. I need to consciously decide not to drink 10 pints on Thursday night if I've got my child on Friday, or I don't want to be hungover, or if I've got an important deadline, I need to make sure I'm looking after myself before that. And I just wanted to mention a couple of books that I think are really apposite for this conversation. One is this. I don't know if you've heard of Jocko Willink.
You've mentioned him quite a few times.
He's got a podcast. Mm-hmm. He's really good on. He was a Navy SEAL commander, I think. He's really good on what he calls extreme ownership, which is like where we begun this conversation. It's like, am I a victim or am I a player? Yeah. He's often talking about, like, if I'm in a job and my colleagues aren't really pulling their weight and my boss is full of shit and I'm picking up the slack for my boss, Jocko Willink would say, yeah, good, just keep doing it, and eventually it's inevitable that you will rise in that organization because you will become indispensable. So there's maybe there's a code there around discipline versus motivation. We can't rely on motivation. What was the other one I was going to talk about? This is quite an interesting one. The Way of the Superior Man by David Dada. It's a really interesting book. A Spiritual Guide to Mastering the Challenges of Women, Work, and Sexual Desire. It's quite a provocative book. Some of the stuff he says in there about, like, if your woman is becoming very emotional and she's angry at you and upset, that's at that moment when you feel most disgusted by her chaotic feminine energy is the moment you must lean in and contain her and ravish her, stuff like that. So it's like really quite challenging to get your head around. You're like, well, okay, what? But there's like really interesting, good stuff in there. And then this is the other one that I was thinking about. Secrets of Natural Success by William Whitecloud. 5 Steps to Unlocking Your Genius. I think that's come to my mind really because he just writes beautifully about his own process of making sense of his early life, difficulties in his early life, difficulties around his relationship with his father and his brother, and integrating that into his own code. He's developed a really beautiful program called Create Your Destiny, which you can do. It's an online program where it's like live calls, but then a lot of work you do in your own time. So he's really distilled an actual code to enable people to live better lives, but it's all come from his own life experience, if that makes sense. So I think reading that book will give you a really nice journey through a deeper, richer journey through what we've been talking about, which is the great mystery of, like, what the fuck are we doing here? Why is my soul come here and incarnated in my body?
Wow.
That's what we're trying to discover. And I guess that's the question of, well, my code has got to be something to do with that. And it's got to be unique to me because I'm unique and you're unique.
Zac, are you happy to wrap up there? Would you want any further thoughts?
No, that's complete for me. How about you?
What would be great is, I think there was a lot of valuable stuff in that. If you could pop all of that into the description of the video, because I think people are going to find a lot of it helpful. I know I did.
So Just remind me what that was. So we've got
I know we had the retreats.
yeah, got that down.
I think the books you're talking about
Yeah. Okay.
is the other key.
Okay. Great. I will.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in again. We'll be back shortly. 4 more episodes available if this is the first one you're watching. So that's already up for you. And there's 5 more to come after this. So that's all going to end it. Take care, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye.